All right, introduction. Movement, a love story. Alice, a college professor, has been coming to me for years. When she was in her late 60s, she experienced a 2-year span where she lost her husband, received a breast cancer diagnosis, and fell into a deep depression, during which she had to simultaneously mourn her partner and her life as she knew it. Of course, we all know that as age creeps forward and years pile up, life tends to take more than it gives. But this was almost too much. As she later told me, I just didn't know what the point of life was anymore. When living reaches the point of pointlessness, there's not a lot you can say to that person. It'll be okay? Yeah? No. Call it whatever you want. The end of the line, rock bottom, Alice had reached that point. So you know what she did? She went for a walk, which turned into a slow run. This smart, accomplished woman who'd been hollowed out by loss and disease tied on her sneakers and went out the door. She didn't pull a Forrest Gump and run to the opposite ocean and back, but after her run that day, which in truth wasn't all that long, she went out again and did it the next day. She ran and kept running to fight her disease, to aid her recovery, and to stare down her sadness. After some months, she entered a race, and then another race after that. Then, at age 70, with her cancer and depression in remission, she ran her first marathon. After that, she ran another marathon. As of this writing, Alice has run 15 marathons. She comes to me with the classic aging endurance athlete issues, usually achy knees, but we also talk. Over the years, I've gotten her started on a strength training program to prevent losing muscle. Heck, she's actually increased it and protect her bone density. So now she's a fully engaged, wildly independent, exceptionally motivated 80-something who runs 26.2 miles and teaches a kettlebell class to 80-year-olds. Now she's motivating people. But on that day, that first run, why did she do it? Why? So this book is all about, and I didn't even need these, that's good. This book is all about the science of motivation. Now, if you've been in Vail long enough and you've had an MRI, which I'm sure many of you have had MRIs in your knees because you've had a fall on Ricky's or whatever place you've fallen, you know that MRIs are great for showing a torn ACL. Hopefully you haven't had to see that MRI, but we all do. But finding motivation is a much more challenging issue. How do you have it? How do you recognize it? How do you keep it? How do you evaluate if you've got a lot of it? What happens when it goes away? Motivational health, doing it consistently, is very difficult even if you live in a place like this. So tonight we're going to talk about some of the science behind motivation and healthy motivation. Now, as was mentioned, this book is dedicated to my dad, who used to love to sit across the river and look out on the golf course and say, "Isn't this great?" That was his famous thing, "Isn't this great?" He had really made it because he was looking out across the golf course. And in thinking about push, as Andy mentioned, I come from a family of 4 brothers, all doctors Metzl, and we were all pushed, although we didn't realize it at the time. And the idea of push is a lot about how you can learn to push yourself, push your family members, push your community, all of which I've learned how to do over time. And I think a lot of it comes from my dad's backstory. So born in a little small town in the middle of Nowheresville, Austria in 1935. It wasn't a very good time to be in Austria in 1935. He and my grandparents were eventually sent to a ghetto in Vienna in 1938. They escaped barely to Switzerland, where he lived until he was 13, which is why he loved this area so much, because it reminded him of that. Then at age 13, with most of the family having been killed, they basically came to the United States on the Queen Mary, landed in New York, not speaking a word of English. My dad had been reading Western novels in German in Switzerland, set in Dodge City, Kansas. So when they landed in New York, they said, "Where do you want to go?" And they said, "Sioux City, Iowa, Louisville, Kentucky, or Kansas City, Missouri." And they looked to my dad, who knew the word Kansas, and lo and behold, born was the world's greatest Kansas City Chiefs fan. Now, the truth of the matter is that when they got there and ended up in Kansas City and opened up a kosher meat market, my dad studied, ended up getting a scholarship to college and medical school, came out to New York to meet my amazing mother. The truth of the matter is, with that kind of backstory, you could easily slip into a very negative view of the world and a very dark view of the world. But the idea of pushing yourself to take every opportunity, to take the positive experience of anything, the answer was always yes. Go to see a Chiefs game, yes. Go to an opera, yes. Go to classical music. Go to the Ford Center. Go to hear music at the Vail Dance Festival, or some of the summer music, or go over to Aspen and listen to the music festival there. Go for a hike, whatever it is. The answer was always yes. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was being taught push. That's what I grew up with. That was in the water. And both my parents really made that a big part of what we do. So I opened the book with 2 quotes. One from Gandhi: "You must be the change you wish to see in the world," because it's great to think about it, but you got to see it, see where you're going. And number 2 is a quote from me: "Commit to getting off your ass." Because if you're not committing to do it, you can think about it, you can talk about it. You got to do it. You got to do it every single day. You got to do it when it's cold, when it's wet, when it's raining, when it's windy. You got to do it every single day. Tonight we're going to talk about how. Now, in my sports medicine practice, I have a strong connection between movement and medicine. And over time, these 2 things have come very much together. So if you come to see me with an arthritic knee, we'll talk about what we're going to do to fix your knee. We're going to talk about maybe some injections, maybe some other things to make the knee feel better. But simultaneously, we're going to talk about strengthening. We're going to talk about activity. We're going to talk about what different ways you're going to track your own activity. We're going to talk about activity trackers or virtual strength training programs, or ways to put you into a program so you're moving. Because the truth of the matter is that every body part feels better when you move, and every body part feels worse when you don't. I have a number of patients with bone-on-bone arthritis who are doing great because they're active and they're strengthening. I have a number of people with less than that whose joints are killing them because they're very weak around their muscles, around their joints. And so making sure you are committing to movement is a big part of the practice of what I do. I'm also going to give you a term called inflammaging or inflammaging, which is a combination of inflammation and aging, which is an increasingly recognized concept that many of the big chronic diseases, and in the second part you see the disease connections, the most expensive cardiovascular disease and diabetes in the United States, cancer and osteoporosis, neurodegenerative diseases are now largely linked to inflammation over a lifetime. And so the idea that you can reduce your inflammatory load over your lifetime and prevent some of these diseases from showing up or showing up later is now very well established. How are you going to do that? Muscles and movement. Now, there's a lot of BS in the longevity spaces I'll talk about in a second, but we have great evidence on muscles and movement. And I'll tell you about how I kind of got to the idea of thinking about prescribing those things for everybody, which I think is tremendously important and beneficial. And increasingly, there are different biomarkers being used to look at inflammatory changes in the body and how those can affect chronic disease risk and expression. Now, it's important to remember that pushing yourself is not comfortable. I was doing a podcast today around running and running health, and one of the things I talked about was that if it doesn't hurt a little bit, you're not doing it the right way. Like, I want you to be uncomfortable. And if you're training for a marathon or my little brother talked me into doing the damn Leadville 100 mountain bike this summer, which, whatever, I'll do my best. If you're doing the triple bypass, if you're doing whatever, if it's not uncomfortable, you're not doing it right. But the benefit of that, using the marathon analogy, is that if you want to run a marathon faster, you have to be comfortable exerting yourself more. You have to be comfortable doing your speed training so that you're running faster than you normally do. So then when you run your marathon pace, it's easier. But during those sprints of trying to get your heart rate up, it's extremely uncomfortable. And you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable. So the idea of calling the book Push is both pushing your mind, pushing your body, and pushing your physiology. All those things need to be pushed, and they need to be pushed at every age. I have people in their 80s come into my classes doing burpees. And so I want you to think about how you're pushing yourself. It's great you're going out for a walk. It's better than sitting on the couch. But if you're not huffing and puffing as part of what you're doing, you're not pushing hard enough. So I want to make sure you are doing that in different ways throughout your day. Now, for me, sports have been a great way to learn about pushing myself and to learn about how I can take the idea of pushing and ramp that up. And this is at the finish of one of the Ironman races in Lake Placid. If you need to know anything about siblings, all you have to do is look at me near death. And I'm near death because A, it was a terrible race. B, because the jackass on my right there, who happens to be my brother, had this great idea that you can take a stool softener the day before and then you won't have any of these bathroom problems the next day, and I said, all right, he's the only non-MD in the family, but he's happy to give medical advice. He knows what he's talking about. Rule number one, never listen to the guy with that. So I did it like 2 o'clock in the morning. I wake up. It was like the Ringling Brothers Circus was in town, and I was the elephant. And it was I got to the race very depleted, and I finished the race like that and then like that. And all you have to do is look at that guy's smile, like I'm near death, and look at that face. The race volunteer's like, oh my God, are you okay? My brother is like laughing at me. But the take-home message from this is a lot about learning to become comfortable with adversity, helping your resilience. And so from a physiologic point of view, it's important to think about doing things that are taxing. I want you to tax yourselves. I want you to think about adversity as a building block. And I would say that some of the greatest lessons I've had over time have been from adversity and the power of adversity. Now, sometimes this comes in different shapes and different sizes and different patients. Peter Kirk was a patient of mine who I met after his whole story started, but he started a big tech company, was doing very well, had a few kids, was living in New York, had a terrific Norwegian wife, and all of a sudden was diagnosed with leukemia. All of a sudden got very sick. All of a sudden was intubated with pneumonia and needed a bone marrow transplant. All of a sudden was being read last rites by the priest at Memorial across the street and made a decision that if I get through this damn thing, I'm going to try and give back here. So he ended up surviving, ended up deciding to start running, ended up deciding to run 1,000 half marathons over a 10-year period of time, 3 a week, every single week, and with that messaging to try and raise money for medical research. So thus far, in helping him along, he's at 503 half marathons, and he's donated over $2 million to medical research already. So taking a crappy situation and triumphing, pushing, that's the idea. Those are some of the people that I'm lucky enough to get to meet. So although sometimes if I'm doing like a virtual patient call with somebody who's like a finance bro on their yacht in some place, and they're like doing remote work, and I'm like, God, I wish I could do remote work. That sounds pretty good. But the benefit of seeing people every day is that I get to interact with people and get to see their stories and understand their stories, which is really valuable and meaningful. So my perspectives are really fourfold. I think as a sports medicine doctor, physician, as an athlete, I think it's important. As an educator, transmitting information. And then the idea of taking all this and building a fitness community was something that I found really gratifying. And maybe we have some people on here that want to do the same thing here. There's a lot of opportunity here to do that. And so each of those different parts of me helps feed the message I'm going to give you tonight. So as a sports medicine doctor, these are the things I do. Understand why injuries happen, understand what I can do to help keep people going, understand the biomechanics of why injuries happen, and then try to give treatments that are kind of aligned with some of the cutting edge things that we can do. I will tell you, as I'm going to get to longevity in a second, but even in this world, there's a lot more crap that shows up on an MRI than you need done. So everybody in this room has a meniscus tear, I guarantee you. Just get an MRI. As Andy Kaufman will tell you, almost every single person in this room has at least one herniated disc. Just get an MRI. And so if you want to get stuff done, just get those tests. It's important to be your own best patient advocate. The first book I did, called Athlete's Book of Home Remedies, was all about how you can be your own best advocate around understanding the information you're getting, but also understanding what you can do at home on your own before you start getting procedures done. So I'm very balanced in trying to get that in trying to get my patients going. But in my sports medicine practice, I started out with 2 separate circles in my life. One circle was the medical circle. When things are broken, I fix those broken things. And then I had the other circle, which is I do sports as part of keeping myself and people around me healthy. So I had the sick, broken world, and the healthy world was all sports. Over time, those circles became the same. And as I mentioned now, I'm as much into thinking about how I can keep people going as I am about the medical part. And so those things are very much intertwined. We have a lot of great evidence on the role of movement for preventive health. So let's meet a couple people. John is a 56-year-old father of 3. He's got an hour commute each day, each way. He's 15 pounds overweight. He's feeling his energy decline. And he said, Doc, I've got no time at all. I got no time. So he's part of these millions of parents who they want to prioritize health, but they just don't have any time to do it. And so what do people like that do? They end up, cutting themselves short in this discussion. Or Lisa, a 39-year-old nurse. She got 2 kids under 10. She was a former collegiate athlete. She used to be very fit. Now she doesn't have time. I used to be so fit, I'll get back to it. With these different transitions in her life, she's lost a lot of her fitness, affecting her health. And she kind of has this gap between where she was and where she is. All right. There's a lot of noise in this space. I know this was the advanced billing, and so let me get into the advanced billing on this piece. There's a lot of, BS in this longevity medicine space. The truth of the matter is, we can't do very much to extend life expectancy in a lot of the stuff that's being thrown your way. So I'm just curious, I'm going to throw some terms out. Who here has either had, thought about, or been approached about the following things? Full body MRI screening. Don't be shy. Raise your hand. Any full body MRI? I've thought about it, I've done it, I've heard about it. All right? And this is basically the preventive model of you're going to get an MRI every year and we're going to find all the things before they happen model. Creatine. Who's taking creatine? Thinking about creatine, thought about creatine, has been approached about creatine, wants to take creatine. Good. Who here has thought about, heard about, or considering peptides? Raise your hand. Nice. There's no judge here. Own it. It's good. This is part of what's happening in the world. So far, you're 3 for 3. All right. Supplement stacks. 4 for 4. All right, good. Self-monitoring technology, Oura rings, Whoops, smartwatches. That should be the whole room. Who doesn't have a smartwatch? All right, fine. Congratulations. All right. Intensity training, HIIT workouts. Good. Almost the whole room, including my mom. Good job, Mom. Blood flow regulation therapy. A couple. Idea of compressing an area upstream causes a growth hormone surge, affects the way tissue develops. Growth hormone or steroid use. Some, for a reason. All right. So there's a lot of noise in this space. What I will tell you is, in order of things, there's not a ton of data on a number of these things. So for example, I have a big story coming out next week in The Atlantic I've been working on for a while called We're Overselling Longevity. Intended to really push the point that the early generation longevity was great. It was all about lifestyle and things that I think really make a difference. We have great evidence on. What's happened over time is there's been a lot of venture capital money put into this space. It's projected by 2030, $8 trillion of money in the longevity and wellness space, one of the fastest growing sectors of our economy. And with that has come a lot of marketing, a lot of direct-to-consumer marketing, and a lot of ideas around if you're going to get pancreatic cancer and we find your little tumor, before that happens, you're well ahead of the game. The problem is that at present, even with AI-generated models, we can't predict what's a problem and what's not. And so 98% of the things that come out are false positives. So you get a full body MRI, and I write about in my op-ed that I was seeing a guy for an ACL tear who his wife worked for one of these full body MRI companies. She was the lawyer for one of the companies, and they said, "You want a free full body MRI at age 41?" He said, "Yeah." So he went in, he got it, and they found a little lesion in his prostate. Now, his PSA was totally normal, but he went to the urologist, and the urologist said, "I would never biopsy this in my whole life. Your PSA is normal, except for this showed up on this scan, so I kind of have to biopsy this now." They biopsied it was normal, but he said he couldn't sit down for like 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks after I saw it. I wish I never would have done this. That is the vast majority of cases of this kind of technology. So there will be a time in the future where the small thing that's seen can be predicted in terms of what it becomes. But now, the vast majority of findings are basically things that are just going to require a lot more follow-up, a lot more invasive things. The mortality risk from a liver biopsy is more than 1%. How many people have like little liver lesions that show up or kidney lesions that show up? So I'm very apprehensive about those. Creatine, no problem at all. It's found naturally in chicken and fish. If you don't get a lot of those things, you want to load a little creatine, totally safe, no problem at all. Self-monitoring technology, I love the idea of giving more data to yourself. Where am I? What's my body fat composition? How much sleep am I getting? That's great. I have no problem with that self-monitoring. I think it gives you an idea of where you are. Supplement stacks. People are loading supplements, and the supplement industry, again, I'm a little cautious about that whole thing because there's not a lot of evidence in there, and there's a lot of different things marketed in the world of supplement. Peptides more so. We have been using peptides in medicine for a long time. Insulin is a peptide. Ozempic is a peptide, and some of the derivatives therein. But this idea of peptides that have not been really tested, we don't know where they're being made, makes me a little apprehensive, et cetera. So there's a lot of, in this space, things that make me very concerned. The overall concept, though, is that what we're looking to do is narrow our lifespan, health span gap. Lifespan, how long we live. Health span, how long we live healthily, two separate terms. And unfortunately, in the United States, our lifespan, health span gap continues to widen. So people are living in poor health longer and longer periods of time. Now, when we look at the trajectory of longevity, the argument I make is we've done an amazing job already. If you were alive in the 1850s, 1840s, your projected lifespan was about 44 years old. If you're alive today, it's about 80 years old. What made the difference? Vaccines, antibiotics, clean water, et cetera, made a huge difference. So this whole idea of extending your life expectancy is a business. And these are some of the people in that business. So this fella, who's a former tech executive, who is kind of a curious guy, going around with this concept called Don't Die. That's the name of his project, the Don't Die Project. I'm a little skeptical about that. Excuse me. And it's fine, except for he's doing some curious stuff. He sleeps about 14 hours a day in a kind of in a cool, dark, almost like a cave type situation. He does plasmapheresis from his 20-year-old son on a monthly basis, does a blood exchange with his son. He has, among other things, a penile monitor to measure the number of erections he has per night. Kind of interesting. And he just, I don't know. Now, that being said, the concept of living longer, healthier, has been studied and is interesting. So the super-ager research is great. So this research, looking at people between the ages of 80 and 100, super-agers are people who live past 80 with no chronic disease. Most people have 2 or more chronic diseases by the time they hit 80. And so if you're 80 and you don't have any chronic disease, you're what's called a super-ager. And so there was a study looking at the genomic sequencing of super-agers versus controls. And the idea was, if I told you people lived to 85 or 90 with very minimal health problems, you'd think genetically there's a huge difference. But in this study group, head-to-head, there was actually no difference between the control group and the super-agers. What was it? Lifestyle, lifestyle, lifestyle. Which leads us to the idea of what gives us actual healthy longevity. And these are the 6 interconnected principles that make a big difference. Stress and stress reduction, diet, exercise, community, sleep. These things interface to give us health and healthy longevity. I want everybody to be Judy. So Judy has been coming to our classes for years. She comes in, she does exercise, she does burpees in the mud at 6:30 in the morning in Central Park. She's 75 years old. She's on no medications. She does the marathon almost every year. Look at that face. right? Awake, alert, smiling, knows what's going on. She's awesome. One of the big problems I have with a number of these quote unquote influencers with these big muscles, and they just don't look happy. Like they're never smiling. They're never smiling. Like none of these people are smiling. Like look at Judy's face. That's what I want for people. I want people to look like that. From a health point of view, someone like Judy, we think about the effects of exercise, including on her neurologic function, her cardiovascular function, her pulmonary function, her muscle function, her body composition, her metabolic function. All of these, we have great evidence on the role of exercise for changing the expression of disease. But increasingly, we're learning about cellular manifestations of aging. So things like her telomeric length. So the telomere is part of what protects the DNA and prevents cell death. And so the telomere at the end has a little cap, and basically the longer that cap is, the longer that cell will live for. And exercise has been shown to slow telomeric attrition. Exercise produces things called myokines from your muscles, which are profoundly anti-inflammatory. Interleukins doing the same. So increasingly, we're learning a lot about the role of exercise. If you're using one of the smart technologies like a watch or a ring, great. What you're going to get is some more information about your body comp or your balance or your flexibility, your cognitive, your cardiac, your strength, all of which have been linked to assessing aging. That can in turn give you a biologic score versus your chronologic. So let's say I'm 70, but my biologic score says I'm 52. You're still 70. But what you are is a healthy 70. And so the idea of maximizing your healthy longevity, I think, has a lot of merit. And famously, Ronaldo, who's 41, did a Whoop score, which is a lot of the same stuff, and ended up with a Whoop score of 27. So everyone's like, oh, Ronaldo's 27. He looks awesome, but he's not 27. So it's important to put this stuff in proper context. It's like getting a blood pressure reading. It's a good idea of where you are so you can kind of get a sense of where you're going. And I think it's very valuable for that. But the vast majority of things are related to what you can do every day for free. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about, these people paying a lot of money to buy all these supplements or whatever else, it's like this guy. So let's say you want to ride from here to the top of Vail Pass, which I highly recommend, especially since they fixed the path up there. And you want to go and you want to beat your brother doing that. And you think, if I spend $15,000 on this Pinarello, I will beat my brother. And so you send off to Italy. Augusto Pinarello gets your bike, sends it here. You go down, you get it all fit up. You get your whole gear, you get your matching outfit, you get your sunglasses, and your brother still kicks your ass. Why did that happen? Because the 99% of things you should have been doing, strength training, HIIT training, cardiovascular training, strength training, nutrition, sleep, all those things, he was doing. Right? You just got the bike. So when it comes to this healthy longevity, the 98% of the stuff is free and it works versus this 2% that people are kind of really diving into, which I think is very misguided in my view. Now, what I will tell you is you've got to keep those muscles strong. Who here strength trains 2 or 3 times a week? Well, that is preaching to the converted. I love it. I love to hear that. What we've learned is that healthy muscle is hugely important for healthy longevity. You've got to keep your skeletal muscles going and strong. It becomes tremendously important in thinking about what's going to keep you healthy and keep you resilient. This is the aging curve with respect to muscle. And on the top, we see someone who's actively involved in strength training. On the bottom, we see somebody who's not doing enough strength training. And I want to make sure you keep yourself up in that active threshold for the whole, you moved all the way out here. Make it count. Build those muscles. Get in the gym. Do it consistently. At the back of Push, I have a whole series of exercises to do at home with body weight. Those are easy. You can start those, but literally anything is better than nothing. Just start doing strength training as part of what you do. If you don't, what ends up happening is that the muscle you have gets replaced by visceral fat. That fat is pro-inflammatory. Inflammatory linked to disease. So you not only get weaker, you get sicker. So the idea of using muscle as an agent of healthy longevity is really important, an important turn in what we've learned over the past probably 10 years. That muscle is anti-inflammatory. Aging muscle replaced by fat is pro-inflammatory. And inflammaging related to disease is related to all those terms. Look at these pictures. This is a cross-sectional MRI of, on the top, a 40-year-old triathlete. That's somebody who has at the top great quad muscle mass, very little subcutaneous fat. The middle is a 74-year-old sedentary guy looking at very little skeletal muscle and a lot of subcutaneous fat. And the bottom is a 70-year-old triathlete. I want all you guys to be that guy. That's what you're after. As an athlete myself, I really believe in the idea of pushing. This is this year's marathon coming over the 59th Street Bridge at mile 16. It sucks. That's not a face of happy. I was miserable. I hated it. I was like, what the hell am I doing this for? So it's not like it's always great. It sucks. But because it sucks, it's great. Because it sucks, it's great. All right? That's the truth. So you gotta make yourself do it. You gotta make yourself push. What have I learned from my role as an educator? I've learned a lot about talking to patients, teaching patients, but also in my fitness world, I've learned a lot about getting messaging that seems to work over time, and that teaching and giving to others is really gratifying as a reason to do things. What I've learned about habits is that the biggest part of habit formation is starting the habit. When I started researching and looking at motivation, talking to my patients about motivation, I thought that there were people that were just not motivated. I increasingly don't think people are unmotivated. I think people that are successful build strategies to put movement into their lives. It comes easier to some than others, but those who are successful seem to be able to create strategies to keep themselves moving. The idea being that if you start a habit over several months, that habit becomes part of what you do. So willpower is great to get started, but design, meaning how close is the thing I'm going to do? How can I lower my cost to act? I'm going to talk about that next as an idea of what I'm going to think about when I build the habits I'm going to do. Because sustainable fitness is a lot about removing the obstacles as well. So when we look at this little guy with his siblings just off camera, he wants to get the tractor tire up and towards us. The biggest activity with anybody is getting that damn thing off the ground. Once it's rolling, it's rolling. Now he's going to start rolling it. There he goes. Right? That's all of you, right? The idea, getting that habit started is the hardest part. Once it starts rolling, much like Alice at the top, once it starts rolling on itself. So I want you to think about what we call lowering your cost to act. It's a behavioral economics term. There's a whole center at University of Pennsylvania. The Penn Med School and Wharton have a combined program where they study motivation and the financial aspects of motivation on health. And so what they study is what, among other things, what does it take to get people to change their behavior? And it's very little financial reward. People have to figure out what are their motivational strategies. So is it they lay out their fitness clothes the night before? They choose a place to live that has a fancy gym right inside the place where they live. They shorten their workout time, so they do shorter, intense workouts instead of long periods of time. They create financial incentives. They prepay a trainer and say, I hate losing money. I'm going to pay this person in advance knowing I hate losing money, so I have to go or I'm going to lose my money. Or I am going to basically reward myself every time I do something like that. They attach existing habits, something they like. They like podcasts, they like walking, they put them together. And they do things they like to do. To me, the biggest piece around this is actually enjoying what you're doing. I can't emphasize enough how enjoyment is a huge piece of this discussion. Increasingly, we're learning about the value of short bursts of activity in your day, not exercise, but activity, what we call exercise snacks. And that falls into this category of variable intensity lifestyle physical activity, or VILPA. And the idea is, if I'm on the third floor of an apartment place, I'll take the stairs every time. Or as I'm feeling better, I'll start doing 2 stairs at a time. If I'm working in an office, every hour I'll get up and I'll do air squats. I'll start thinking about basically putting little bursts of activity in my life every single day, which add up and are linked strongly to improved metabolic health and disease reduction. So we have good evidence on those. But the idea is to start thinking about how you basically shift yourself from I'm trying to do something to I'm going to do something consistently. There's a lot of people struggling with exercising regularly. And when I talk in kind of corporate environments, I like to help companies think about how their companies can help think about strategizing formula to get their employees active. Because active employees are better employees. They cost less health-wise, they're more productive, they're sick less, they're just better employees in general. So how do you start thinking about changing that culture where you are becomes a big difference. So when I think about motivational plans for people, I start thinking about week 1, find something you love to do. Around here, it's very easy to do. And figure out how you're going to remove some of the barriers to do that. By the time you get to the second week, you're going to figure out how you can make it stick. You can experiment with different things you like to do. But consistency is a lot about putting fun into what you do. By the time you get to week 3, you're going to start thinking about embracing the discomfort I talked about. Embracing discomfort, trusting what you're doing, starting small. By the time you get to week 4, you're a master. You're going to keep pushing ahead, and the community you're in becomes a strength as part of what you do. So revisiting the people I told you about at the beginning. John, 56-year-old father of 3, an hour to commute each day, 15 pounds overweight, I've got no time. We started giving him resistance bands. He started doing the stairs at work. He did 10-minute circuits in the morning before everybody got up. After 6 months, he lost 12 pounds, got more energy, he's doing great. Lisa, the nurse, 39-year-old nurse working full-time, 2 kids over 10, has lost so much of her fitness. She joined a 6 a.m. fitness class near the hospital, near where I am. These little movement patterns helped. She then started incorporating her kids into part of her exercise. I have a lot of families who do strength training together, which is great. After 8 months, she's stronger. She's much more enjoyable in what she's doing. She kind of feels like she is doing it properly for herself. And then lastly, I would tell you what I've learned in my fitness world, because I think a lot about this message is about fitness and being consistent with fitness. And I've been lucky enough to grow our program. We started 15 years ago with 15 people in the basement of a gym on Sunday afternoons. Now we've grown to, last year we got 11,500 people moving in New York last year. We have about 55,000 people as part of our community. And we do all kinds of great events all over the place. And the joy of doing that is a lot about prescribing the medicine of exercise for people as a drug. I want people to take the drug of movement as a big part of what they do, which is why you live up here. I love this video from Sweden. And I want you to think about this when you go home tonight, because this video from Sweden looked at taking a subway station where they had an elevator and stairs. And the idea was, can we get people to take the stairs by making it fun? A little louder, please, John. So I want you to think about fun as part of what you do. So my final message around this concept of push is I want you to start today. I want you to be consistent with some of the things you're thinking about and doing. I want you to keep pushing, because wherever you are now, I guarantee you 10 years from now, you wish you would push more right now, wherever you are. So start now. Start pushing. And sustainable motivation isn't something that just you wake up and, the New Year's resolutions fail by about 6 weeks in almost everybody. It's about kind of changing your behavior patterns a little bit over time so that becomes successful. So with that, thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I wonder if you could comment on what you think about GLP-1s.
Sure. So GLP-1s have been a wonderful, I just did a whole thing in the Washington Post last week on exercise for weight loss, and I made the comment that exercise alone is not a very effective way to lose weight, and that we know that obesity and visceral fat is pro-inflammatory, a high risk for disease, and we've not had a lot to give people other than either exercise or bariatric surgery, that are, among other things. GLP-1s have totally changed the equation for many people with the right patient. Now, the upside is you lose fat. The downside is you lose a lot of muscle, and you get a rebound effect when you come off of them. So generally, I think first-line treatment does not involve GLP-1, but if you're at a point where you're still in a zone where you're having a lot of problems, they have been game changers, and I'm a big fan. They need to be paired with consistent, dedicated, I will do it no matter what, strength training at least 3 times a week, have to. And you need to make sure you're doing it in the context of the right situation. Not the people who just want to microdose a little bit, and I'm not as big of a fan about that. But I'm a big fan on the right patient. I think they've totally changed the equation, and I think we're going to see more of that as the oral form comes out now. So it's part of lifestyle modification. I'm a big fan. Good question.
You mentioned...
Tell me your name, by the way, so I know who you are.
My name is Gloria McMahon.
Hi, Lori.
Hello. You mentioned many of your patients doing marathons and running. What else do you advocate for people besides running a marathon for an exercise plan that is something doable?
That's a good question.
For the non-marathon runners.
Lori, there's nothing else. I'm sorry.
He'll take
I hope I gave the message, and I'm sorry if I didn't. That's what I'm into, and a number of people in my world are. Honestly, it could be anything, any activity. I have walkers, I have swimmers, I have yogis, I have Pilates people. I got everything. I just care that A, you like it and you smile, and B, I love goal setting. For me, not everybody loves a goal setting, but I love goal setting of something. Running races or walking races are great, but bike riding things are great. Something, swimming, something in your future. Maybe it's, I want to walk to the top of Eagle's Nest, and that's my goal, is to hike up Eagle's Nest. Berry picker, I want to do berry picker by the end of the summer. Everybody's got a different goal, and so the idea of giving yourself a goal to shoot towards, I think, is very valuable. The process of getting there involves strength training, cardio training, and those types of things, no matter what you're doing. So you have to, the principles are the same no matter what you're doing. Give yourself a goal as a project and start thinking about how I'm going to work to get to that goal.
Jordan, question from the online audience. A comment about supplements being unregulated, about the difference between what's on the label and in the bottle. Can you pull the curtain back on that for us?
Yeah, so I think in that world, there's no FDA oversight of supplements. There are many more people pushing supplements than we have any idea what's in a number of these products. Many of these are probably pretty benign, but people just loading supplement stacks is a big part of what they're doing because something is being pushed in their direction, I'm not a big fan of, personally. I think the things we know about, creatine, no problem, glucosamine, chondroitin, no problem, omega-3s, no problem, fish oil, no problem. I think there's a lot of these that are quite benign, don't have a problem, but I think these supplement stacks, loading big amounts of supplements, I'm a little more apprehensive about myself.
Hi, Barry Goldberg.
Hi, Barry.
Many years ago, when I started jogging, there were very few women jogging, and it was almost all men. Now, I see that things have reversed. See very few men jogging on the streets, and I see a lot of women. And I'm looking at your video, I'm seeing a predominance of women in your group over there. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, so a couple things have changed over time. Number one, great question and comment. Number one is that with COVID, we had a big boom in the running world in general because gyms were closed and people started doing it more and it was kind of free and outside and available. So that we had a lot more entry-level people. In terms of gender, men used to be the predominant runners. And where I go speak in other countries, there are still, like in Japan, for example, it's 70-30 men. But here in the United States, it's about 60-40 women, percent-wise, and your observation is correct. Women generally are better at health and preventive health than men. They think about those things more than men do. That's why find a woman and make sure she's helping run some of the decisions in your life is a good plan. You'll live longer. And thinking about interesting changes, not only running, but strengthening. It used to be that muscles were kind of really men and men only. And now, there's CrossFit and those types of activities all over the place. And women are much more into muscles. Probably started around the time Brandi Chastain took off her shirt and whipped her shirt around with muscles in the Women's World Cup, whenever that was. But there's been a real shift towards the importance of muscles for women, which is better too. So I think it's constantly evolving. And, basically, women are smarter. They exercise better. But we got to be around for something. But generally speaking, I think that's probably the case.
On your right.
Thank you for your talk. It's Ed Bell. What are your thoughts on the consumption of alcohol?
So Ed asked about alcohol. So I'm not an absolutist in any way, Ed. I think that basically a little bit of everything is fine. And I think that a little bit of everything is fine. And I think that these absolutists that are getting people to say, none of this, I think it just never works. If you want to personally do it, fine. But I think in general, everything is fine, some. People that go all in on any particular thing, it ends up usually not working out that well. So I think a little bit of everything is fine. Just be consistent. By the way, the comment I made in the Washington Post article, which I will underscore here, I would much rather somebody be mildly to moderately overweight and active than very thin and inactive. And in the GLP-1 era, you can be thin without being active, and that has negative health consequences. So back to your initial question, the value comes in movement. So make sure you're moving.
Jordy, hi, I'm Lynn Kaufman, and I kind of grew up with Jordy and all the brothers in our skis years. So what I wanted to say was that I saw you on the Today Show 2 days ago, and I was so excited about what you were suggesting, which was more how to be with a community, how to get a partner, how to make a date. And I thought that was really important to hear. And I didn't hear you say too much about it tonight, but you could say a little bit more about, making a date with someone, keeping that date, keeping motivation with friends, people. I thought that was really important. Maybe
Thanks, Lindsay.
say a little something.
I didn't even pay her. That's awesome.
Positive peer pressure.
Totally. No, so I think having a friend or friends to do things with gives a number of things, including accountability to show up, enjoyment, consistency, motivation in general. And it can be anything. It could be bike riding, it could be playing golf, it could be anything. But the idea is it gets you to kind of start doing it and going and being part of that. I think that's really important. I will say that as you get older, your friend circles shrink, right? So it's important to think about figuring out ways to strategize to bring people into your life that can help with that.
Jordan, another online question from Mary Pat. I'm becoming somewhat intolerant to high altitude. What can we do to improve exercise tolerance and enjoy our life up here in the mountains.
So exercise intolerance and altitude. Well, definitely people adjust at different rates. So the first thing is that some people need a slower ascent to up here. So that's one thing for your parents, is they need a slow ascent to up here, number one. Number two is trying to be up here if they want things like hyperbaric oxygen chambers or some of the different altitude tents is what I'm thinking about. People have, they're less expensive now than they used to be. People can sleep in those, get used to them. That may be something to think about as well. And then there's medications that can help people adjust to altitude, but I don't love those. As I like the altitude tents or just slowly acclimatizing. So maybe go to spend a couple nights in lovely Idaho Springs. And then go from there.
Did their tourism board pay you for that?
Exactly.
Okay, BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors. They are like miracle grow for the brain. My husband and I are involved with Alzheimer's Association, and so knowing that exercise is the biggest way of increasing these hormones in the brain is an incredible motivator for us 80-plus-year-olds to keep exercising. Have you heard about that, and do you integrate that into your programs?
Great. So keep the microphone. So BDNF is part of, keep it. So BDNF is part of the idea of the neurologic value of exercise, both as prevention and even treatment. I have a video I show when I do my lecture on exercise effects with a patient with advanced Parkinson's who literally can barely walk down the hall, and they put him on a bike and he's able to bike fully as he activates a different pathway in his brain. And so the concept of, for example, biking for Parkinson's patients, stationary biking, very valuable. So I think the neurologic effect of exercise is incredible. That's why I was so frustrated. We started this seminar 10 years ago at Cornell for the med students called Prescribing the Medicine of Exercise, around teaching exercise prescription, and there was very little curriculum. We've spent decades teaching disease treatment, which is important, and very little thinking about prevention. So that's why I'm so happy. How has exercise changed for you since you've been involved with that?
Oh, incredibly. We've increased the duration, and we've increased the amount of time that we spend, and we are more consistent, totally consistent, trying every day. And I love your little exercise burst during the day too, because that's really important as you age and your body starts to freeze up.
Yeah, great. Exercise snacks.
Off to your right.
Hello, it's Heidi Bintz.
Hi.
I have a question on oxygen. How can you increase your oxygen when you're exercising or even sleeping at this altitude, even if you've lived here a long time?
Gotcha. So, interestingly, oxygen, there's been an increasing, if you follow this longevity space, people are now big into testing your VO2 max as your longevity predictor, which, again, it's become this money-making thing. VO2 max is largely genetics, somewhat influenceable by exercise, but not hugely. Oxygen is basically a product of A, how much oxygen you bring in, B, how much red blood cell volume you have, taking that oxygen around, and C, how strong your heart is about getting the oxygen to your lungs and back out. All those things together affect how able you are to tolerate activity. So training your blood is, if you live up here, you naturally get a higher hemoglobin and hematocrit. That takes about 3 weeks to really kick in. So that should kick in. If you are iron deficient in your diet, you can have what's called iron deficiency anemia, not enough red blood cell volume. That can affect that, so that may be something to think about. If that's all good, then you want to start thinking about, is my heart muscle strong enough? Can I get myself stronger? Can I start putting short bursts of intensity into my life to basically strengthen my heart muscle to pump more blood so I can tolerate exercise easier? That's another thing to start thinking about. Those are the things I'd start thinking about when I start thinking about oxygenation. But if that's really a question, you can get one of these little oxygen monitors on Amazon on your finger and see where you naturally are.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's me. Hey, my name's Katie. I'm basically Lisa that you showed, the nurse up there with two small kids. And my question is, we know we need to make it fun, and we know we need strength training, but strength training's not that fun. So if your bench press doesn't have a piano on it, what else would you suggest to make strength training fun?
Great question. I think so there was an interesting study looking at strength acquisition in high repetition lightweight versus less repetition heavyweight. And the reason I like that study is that the heavier weights, you need to go to a place. The lightweight, dumbbell weight or body weight, you can do at home, around these kids, around family stuff, around thinking about making that fun. I hear you about the fun factor, but within that, with your creativity and intelligence with which you ask your question, I am certain that you can find a way to make the somewhat mundane fun, and I would focus on high rep, lightweight training and circuit training that might employ not only you, but anybody else in your world or in your immediate proximity that can assist with that. Like the guy smiling next to you could probably help a lot too. So him too. Get him involved as well.
Thank you. Right over here. You've talked a lot tonight about physical stressors of exercise to help with longevity. There's some other popular ones like fasting, sauna, cold plunge that are popular with longevity as hormesis to the body. What's your thoughts on that? Gotcha.
So there's a lot of things on intermittent fasting, I think a number of these things definitely cannot hurt you. If you like doing a cold plunge or a sauna and you find you feel better after doing it, no problem at all. Does that mean you're going to live to 136? No. But does that mean you like it and the lifestyle makes you feel? Absolutely. The fasting thing, I think, I'm a bit of two minds on that. I think that if you're building muscle is much more metabolically active than fat. So if you're keeping your muscle mass, you can eat. And I want you to eat. Even on some of the GLP-1s, this whole idea of hangry, like I had 3 of the people in my office were doing GLP-1s at one time. I was like ducking for cover. I mean, they were like, the next day, it's like the day after that shot, you're like ducking for cover. Miserable. So I think calories are very valuable. I think we do have evidence on potentially narrowing your eating window a little bit. So maybe having a narrow not eating after 8 or so, making sure you get up, moving around after you eat instead of just eating, sitting on the couch, going to bed. Those kind of things, I think, make a big difference. But this whole kind of full-on fasting, if you like it, less calories, you can be a little thinner, but make sure you're not turning into a miserable person because you're doing that in the name of longevities. But I have no problem with those things are quite benign and I have no problem trying them.
Hi there, Patty White. My question is, I think many of the people in this room and throughout the Valley don't have an issue with motivating, and people, including myself, are just out there every day, whether we're skiing, hiking, biking, pickleball, yoga, trainer. What are your thoughts about taking days off, resting the muscles so we are not driving ourselves into a place of injury?
Great question. That's my day job. And so that's a lot of what I do every day. In general, I'm not a big fan of days off unless you really need it. I'm a big fan of exercise diversity. So just what you're talking about, this, that, doing the same thing over and over and over again leads to burnout and injury for sure. So I think diversifying what you do is very valuable as part of what you do. And then listening to your body. I just took care of a guy who ran 3 marathons in about a 1.5 year period of time. And in the 3rd marathon, he started, if his knee was sore, training up, he did it anyway. He came in to see me afterwards. He had a huge subchondral fracture in his knee. He basically ran himself into a 4-month injury because he wasn't a good body listener. So I think listening to your body, I have the same advice for kind of kids, parents, and grandparents, which is if pain is changing your mechanic of movement, you got to get it checked out. You're moving differently. But beyond that, I don't think you have to do days off just because you feel like you should. If you feel like you should, you should. But I think doing different things, maybe someday more intense, maybe some days I do yoga or I go swimming or whatever. But I think doing something every day I have no problem with at all.
Before we take this next question, I want to compliment the audience. You're all finding question marks quickly, and we're getting to a lot of questions.
I agree.
We still have plenty of time. This is great.
Thank you. I'm Karen Palmer. Nice to meet you. Could you talk a little bit more about what constitutes strength training? Does it have to be weights, mat Pilates, even yoga?
So in the back of Push, I have a whole series of exercises that are quote unquote strength training, but anything using your body as body weight is fine. Anything that makes your muscles stronger, tense, work is strength training. I do think that some of the, like yoga, Pilates are great for core strengthening. I don't like those as much as the full deal for lower body strengthening and arm strengthening particularly. So I think some combination of body weight or strength work plus Pilates is great, but I think that as a standalone only, generally for most people is not quite enough. But in general, anything that makes your muscles stronger, makes your muscles fatigue, classifies as strength training. And I think as people get older, they have to recognize they need to strength train more. They need to really commit to that as part of what they do. I mean, you guys up here are the subset of the subset of the subset because you live here and you've chosen to live here. You haven't drunk the Kool-Aid. You're like swimming in the Kool-Aid, which is great. But I think there's a lot of people, back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where you came from, that are not. And so how do you start influencing those people, I think becomes a big difference.
Jordan, does dancing count?
Yeah. Dancing counts as enjoyment and exercise and activity. Again, you need some strength too, but dancing is better than sitting on the couch, and people like it.
Hello, I'm Dr. Meredith Ringler, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I've had practice here since '83. And about 40 years ago, when I learned how to do clinical hypnosis, I started groups for fitness enhancement and eating control and started it at the gym I was attending and found that it was very successful in helping people get motivated. My question is, have you done this when people have trouble getting motivation? Have you ever used hypnosis or mental training? And do you know if there's any research that shows the efficacy of that?
Great question. I have not, but what I will tell you is, and great that you're doing that kind of work. What I have found is when I started doing my fitness classes, I started with basically people doing running and triathlon in Central Park, and it was a bunch of people that looked like that doing that. What I found over time was that people brought their friends, their parents, their kids, their grandparents, and I ended up with this kind of multi-generational, multicolored, multi-sized, multi-geographical, huge community of people all inspiring each other. And so one of the things I really have pushed and push is community. And even when I talk about it, when I read it in the audiobook, I talk about the importance of community, that I think what you're doing is, I'm guessing, like what I did. I thought I was prescribing exercise. I just think I'm prescribing community through exercise. That's my vehicle. And I think there's a lot in that around the importance of community and communal activity. And I think you're doing a great job with that.
Jordan, Carol Reichman. Can you address undiagnosed sleep apnea? When you're seeing patients and they're coming in fatigued, not getting enough sleep, they're losing energy.
Yeah, so sleep is one where in the last 10 years plus, we've learned so much more about the importance of sleep and ways to evaluate and improve sleep. I understand you guys had a program here last month on sleep. So for example, at Cornell next door, we have a huge sleep science lab where we have a whole host of clinicians that do sleep evaluation, sleep therapy. I am very standoffish on the medications as first-line treatment for sleep. Some people turn to those right away, either supplements or medications. But I think learning about your sleep hygiene, why you may be having trouble sleeping, sleep apnea being one of the causes for people, is very diagnosable now in some of these sleep centers. And so if you're wondering about somebody having sleep apnea, which can definitely cause fatigue, among other things, I definitely would have talked to somebody that does sleep medicine. Down at CU, they have those right down the hill here. And let's be honest, the snow's not that great, so you're not missing much. And I think thinking about how to evaluate that and to learn about that is helpful.
Hi, my name is Carissa Lovelace, and I have a kind of an answer that I don't know if it's an answer. She asked, how do you make strength training fun? And I haven't tried this yet, but a woman told me this, and I will try it as soon as I can. She said she put a mirror in the space where she was doing strength training. She's somebody who loved to do yoga and all this other stuff, but she couldn't get into strength training. And so when you asked this question, I pictured your kids doing it with you, and I pictured like little kids being like this in the mirror. So I just think when she said it, I was like, that could work. You know, she said she watches herself, she sees the change in her body, and it's a way that she got into strength training. And then my question is, we're not really sure what it is, but it's kind of like restless leg syndrome, where if you do a lot of exercising, your legs actually are really uncomfortable in the evenings. And I was just wondering if you've encountered patients like that and if you've had any solutions for them.
So I think, first of all, I agree with you on making it fun and figuring out how to do that. I think in terms of leg pain and restless leg syndrome in the evening, I would want to know a little more about, what kind of pain, where it's coming. There's probably a reason. And if it's changing what you do, I would probably go talk to somebody and try and figure out, is it coming from your spine? There's a lot of different reasons why somebody might get that. So depending on the amount of uncomfortableness, not an emergency, but I think it's probably worthwhile to get that checked out. That sounds like, something that's persistent, going on for a while. That may be something you want to think about, and hopefully somebody can help give you an answer.
On your right.
Hi, I'm Connie Carson. Can you please address the problems of the aging athlete with macular degeneration and hearing loss, and how that affects their ability to stay fit?
It's a great question, and thanks for asking it. I think that as we all age, the things that we could do easily become more challenging. And so I think you have to think about, much like Lisa, you may not exactly be that athlete you were 15 years ago, 10 years ago, but what kind of accommodations can you build into what you're doing? Guides or different types of exercises, more stable exercises, trainers, people cueing you. I think there's a lot of factors you have to start thinking about. Unfortunately, those discussions sometimes don't happen until somebody has a fall or an injury. And so the fact that you're thinking about that in advance is very helpful.
What to do, how to manage the pain of those types of problems.
Manage the pain?
How do you manage the pain how do you motivate through the pain to get the exercise done?
So for that, I think you have to talk to whoever's taking care of you around those issues and try and figure out, for their particular medical issues, what strategies they might have to help you with that. But I would talk to your ophthalmologist particularly at least to see if they have any strategies or have encountered. I'm sure you're not the first person that's had that, so I would think about that.
Hi, my name is Nicole Noyes, and I trained at Cornell. We didn't overlap, obviously. But when I went to college for biochemistry and nutrition thinking I was going to solve world hunger, and somehow I ended up a fertility doctor and I made 30,000 children. So instead I depleted like the food source of America. But I bring it up because I've followed the nutrition literature through all of this. And I think a couple of important things that I've seen in the last 10 years is, one, how our body is circadian and how our metabolism runs on a circadian cycle. And I wonder if you want to comment on that as far as when you eat your biggest meal. And the other is, being a reproductive endocrinologist, I saw a lot of diabetes and pre-diabetes and then associated obesity, and wondering how you feel about people having a hemoglobin A1C level, because I ordered that on everyone. I just retired, but I ordered that on everyone because it's amazing how many people are pre-diabetic or near the threshold.
Great. Two great questions. So hemoglobin A1C is a test where you can get an idea of your blood sugar control over the past several months. It's very valuable, and I think it's a great test with no downside, and I think that's terrific. In terms of exercise and pregnancy, and or we've had, actually, it's one of the areas where we've had a huge shift change and sea change. We used to have people do very little exercise. Now we're encouraging lots of exercise. And, with that, I think that whole idea of gestational diabetes and diabetes in pregnancy, we used to kind of just give it a free pass. And I think nowadays we're much more talking about exercise on the preventive side as part of that. And I think in the kind of the field of women's health and in women's sports health, which is kind of a newer field over the last kind of 10, 15 years, we've seen a lot more people thinking about some of these issues in your world, which I think hopefully can be helpful as well. Voice is going, so
Yes.
we're good, guys.
Hopefully it's okay on my second question.
Yeah, dude, hey, yeah,
You
fire
brought
it
up peptides earlier.
Yeah.
Can you speak to our FDA approving newer peptides like BPC 157, et cetera?
That's the Wolverine?
Yeah.
Dude, people love that freaking Wolverine. My God, I get so many questions about that Wolverine. Yeah, so I think that as far as I can tell, this Wolverine peptide, which is thought to kind of, it's what I would call a bro peptide. There's a lot of bros who are big into the Wolverine peptide, fitness bros, et cetera. There's a lot of enthusiasm around it. And I guess the one thing I would say is there's no free lunch. There's no free lunch with GLP-1s. So the idea of let's back up. Thalidomide. There was this great drug called thalidomide that was marketed to end morning sickness for pregnant women because morning sickness was a big problem, and people got thalidomide to basically end morning sickness. And then what ended up happening is we ended up with a lot of kids with a lot of really terrible birth defects because of thalidomide. That led to a lot more scrutiny on the way we approve drugs, the way drugs are tested. The idea of these peptides is that they're essentially trying to circumvent that process through direct to consumer. It may be that they cause no problem and no harm at all. But if we learned anything from history, it's that some shit usually goes wrong. We don't know it at the time. Maybe it shows up later. So I would not personally want to do Wolverine peptide until it was FDA approved. And there's some weird stuff going on in our country right now. Let me say that in this space. There's some weird things, approval processes. So I just want to make sure I knew what I was doing. I understand fully the attraction. I do. And I get it. But I would want a little more data. Hopefully that I have not heard yet where that is, but hopefully it's coming. It's so prevalent, I can't imagine but it may be several years from now. But I'm sure at some point in the future we'll know more about it. What I've learned over time is there's no free lunch.
Okay, we may be just piggybacking right on that, but my name's Cheryl Grimaldi, and everyone right now in my world is doing the NAD supplements and NAD.
Oral or inject the pill or the?
Both.
The IV is all kinds of stuff, yeah.
I'm interested in your take on that.
So this NAD plus is not a peptide. So it's an enzyme, which is basically not exactly a peptide. It's thought to affect aging, cellular aging. It's probably relatively safe, especially the pill form is probably relatively safe. I don't think we know enough yet to say it's fully efficacious. It's probably not a problem, but you look awesome. You don't need any freaking NAD, dude. Come on. I think you can fall into this window where all of a sudden you start looking on social media and everyone's like, no, I want them to do that. And then you end up with I want to look like that dude with these muscles, or I want to look like this lady who's like an influencer with all kinds of filters and doing NAD. And it's just there's all this phenomena that happens designed to get you to say, I need that thing in my life. And there's a lot of companies making a lot of money off of you trying to flip that switch to do it. So it's probably okay, but I feel better about your thing than the thing he's asking about. But I don't. But I think keep moving, and I'll come back in a few years and we'll talk about where we are.
Jordan, I have the honor of the last question. It's been such a joy to have such a full house here and a full house online. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm going to keep you in that hot seat for one more. So You've heard the questions from our audience. You get a sense of what they're thinking about, what they're encountering, what they're hearing. Your family's been in this valley a long time. This is a special place and a special community. I wonder if you can give us a closing thought connected to the lifestyle you know that we live, the motivations you know that we have, the gifts of this place and the challenges of this place, the strength of this community as we're all here together. What should we take away as everybody goes and explores Push?
Sure.
What should we be thinking about?
Well, first of all, you guys here are living in a wonderful place with wonderful outdoor resources, and it's such a positive, great place to be. And I try and spend as much time up here as I can. I have like my New York City life and my Riverside Court North life, and I got two separate lives, and I like having them both. There's so much, great things. I think one of the risks of being here is you guys are the target demo for the longevity people. They really, they're looking for people with means who are deeply enmeshed in their health that will kind of buy into a lot of this crap they're selling. And I think you're target zero for that group. So I think you have to be very careful with what you're doing. Much of the stuff I don't care about, but I think some of these trends make me worried, and they make me worried for the Upper East Side of Manhattan or the people here, because you're the target demo of exactly what they're looking to do. And most of you guys are kicking ass. Like you're out, you're hiking up the thing. I was up with my brother on Christmas week. We went up for a run up towards Piney Lake on that road, old red sandstone road. And it was like the moon was out and we were up there running up. And I said, oh shit, we're going to get eaten by like a cougar or something. We came back down, we were okay. And there were like 3 people hiking up in snowshoes with big smiles under the moon, just having a great time. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, that's really good. So you guys are crushing it. So I'd say overall, keep doing what you're doing. Think about your muscles. Think about your motivation. And I'll see you on the road, or I'll see you in a few years. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jordan Metzl.